Session 49. Good evening. I am pleased that Rock came for a regular session, and also that he brought with him a friend, who has been a friend of his, though not of mine, on countless instances. This relationship has gone on through 3 successive lives as far as Rock and his friend is concerned. I have not known him, nor have you, Joseph. He was involved in the Inquisition period, and also like Rock still has remnants of old rigidities. Nevertheless, in his case, an excess fervent nature has always been in existence, and even now, his enthusiasms are extremely fervent. And although a humorous exterior personality now shows its face, nevertheless, the extremely authoritative and sometimes too rigid nature holds the personality presently in bounds. The bounds amount to bounds in some cases. He is given to pervert allegiances, and often should listen to the dictates of inner discipline. The cruelty which he inflicted upon others during the period of the Inquisition was inflicted with the most pure of purposes. He believed firmly that he was following the dictates of God. More cruelties have been effected by principled men than unprincipled men would ever dream. The personality has endeavored to right old wrongs, and has succeeded to a great degree. But at the risk of sacrificing inner spontaneity, and even at the risk of losing the very authoritative aspects of his nature, so that there is still a tendency to follow rather than to lead, simply because in the period of the Inquisition he was in a place of authority. He that made into atrocities committed in the fine name of principle and religion. For this reason, while he is still tempted to lead, he allows himself to lead only in small ways, not trusting yet the judgment which at one time betrayed him. Their religious interests, therefore, are repeated in the present personality, but efforts are made to tide these ideas into the world of so-called reality. The interest in extrasensory perception, the interest in science and religion, all represent efforts on his part to tie various of his older personalities together, and to learn from their mistakes. Rock knew him well during the period of the Inquisition, and again in an immediately past life in the Midwest of your country, as well as in one other existence. Nevertheless, I welcome you, new friend, to the Sessions, and he is one of those of whom I have spoken earlier. I did not find it of much real purpose to give reviews during our sessions, particularly since new witnesses will come. There will have to be some matter, and I leave this up to you, Joseph. Some matter of filling witnesses in one previous sessions. This should be taken care of in some manner. I would like to make a remark for your benefit, Joseph. The experience during psychological time, involving your own image by a body of water, was a most valid, clairvoyant experience, in that you have not as yet visited this particular spot, and it was a glimpse into what you prefer to call the future. I have explained too often that time is a camouflage to go into this now. Nevertheless, you have done well, particularly this week, in your experiments, and your progress should be fairly rapid from now on. Robert, can you tell me something about my experience of seeing the young girl abusing the dog? The girl was a relative of yours. The incident actually occurred in 1935. The relative now lives in your town. The dog does not. Robert, who was the relative? They said, the name of the relative is Ruth. I presume the name makes sense to you. Robert loves to block such personal data. However, I see that he let it come through undistorted. Bravo, Robert. I could hope that this would continue. I suggest that you take a break, as there is much material that I would like to cover this evening. Your new friend can be called Marth, M-A-R-E-T-H, which is the name most suitable for his entity. You realize that such names are translations, as indeed, all of this material is a translation of realities into conceptual patterns, and from conceptual patterns into words. It is with the words, of course, that necessary distortions must occur. If the material is to be understood by the ego, then it must be translated in the beginning into terms which the ego is competent to handle. Unfortunately, inner data which will be and is being received will be valid, vivid, and will exist beyond any doubt. We shall set our plans so that any experiences will be documented. Nevertheless, a freedom from the ego must be permitted to some extent, so that the inner self can more freely operate. I have spoken of tests and experiments that can be conducted, and which will yield physical results that will be ultimately accepted. I have also said that space travel, so-called, will of necessity deviate from its present concern with vehicles. It will be discovered that the inner senses represent your only long-lasting method of such travel. When it is understood that space and time are both camouflages, and that your cause and effect theory is a result of a continuity theory that no longer makes sense, then your scientists will recognize the impossibility of trying to decipher basic reality with camouflage instruments and vehicles that of themselves produce distortive theories and only serve to probe further into a camouflage pattern. The experiments will be many. Hypnotism, as I have mentioned, will be a basic tool in the beginning. Hypnotism, you see, is not a camouflage tool, but a psychological tool which is therefore uncamouflaged and relatively undistorted. Hypnotism will be necessary, however, only for a time, and only to induce the light trance state. In the light trance state, the inner self is free from the camouflage nature of your plan. And the truly humorous aspect is this: only by freeing yourself from your own camouflage universe can you see it clearly, understand it for what it is, and actually learn to use it for mankind's best advantage. When tests are conducted, and this will take a while, but when tests are conducted in laboratories, using the trance, the controlled and disciplined trance, as a tool and an instrument, then, very quickly, you will be able to delve beneath personal subconscious material to other layers. We have spoken of these other layers for the edification of our esteemed visitors. I will quickly mention them. Beneath personal subconscious material, you will find data, free, dealing with racial memories, which will be of great benefit to psychologists and sociologists. Beneath these, you will find material that is concerned with the beginnings of the species as a whole, and beneath these, and connected to it by the emotions, you will come to the boundaries of the inner self. When tests are conducted, the inner self can be reached without too much difficulty. The methods to be used here are already familiar to you, Joseph, and to Ruber. When this material begins to tally, when under trance, many of the same answers are received. When it is discovered that the knowledge of the basic universe is contained within the living individual, and when there is no doubt that the solutions given are the same, then, only then will you begin to solve the problems that are before you. The light trance, again, is necessary only for a time, and theoretically it is not necessary at all. The only necessity here is that you permit yourself not to displace the ego, but more, to enable yourself to look within and past the ego. There are a few more points here, merely connective material, that I want to make before going further into a discussion of experiments that should, and will, be tried. I suggest that you take a break, and one of these nights I will break you all up. But we shall certainly save the pieces. Perhaps between us we can all put them together again, in a most splendid fashion. I have explained to you how the inner self is connected to the present personality, and how the emotions at the end change through the layers of the subconscious, begin in your plan as part of the personality, and as part of your force field, and then are transformed and become the inner sense connective that connects the outer ego to the inner self. I have also explained how energy is transformed and changes, adapting itself to the particular camouflage pattern of any given plan. Now, in these tests, you will reach the inner self. The results will be then valid in physical terms. The emotions are the outer extensions of the inner senses, and it is therefore through the intuitions and the traveling of the pathways of the emotions, that you will come in contact with the inner self, and therefore be able to carry back this information in the same manner. Your visitors are not as yet acquainted with the inner ego, and I suggest that you fill them in. The point to remember here is that the results from the test will be so valid that they will not be overlooked, and yet their validity will be different in quality. You remember what I have said about psychological experience. Psychological experience has no reality in space or time. If you trust only your so-called scientific method, then you would not admit that you have ever even had a psychological experience, since it takes up no space and exists independently of time. Nevertheless, no one will argue that a psychological experience has no validity. A psychological experience is so valid that it can change the course, not only of one life, but of many. Therefore, the proof in our experiments will be valid in the terms that a psychological experience is valid, and more, because by its results, it will make itself known. In space travel, for example, you are not going to be seen flying through the air like some gray-haired eagle. Your journey will simply not be through space, since space is a camouflage. When you realize this, then our energy transformation and our change of molecular structure comes into play. There is no barrier of space to be overcome. There is merely a transformation, first of all of psychic energy, and then, because you are on your plane bound to many camouflage concepts, there will be a secondary reconstruction of physical image. In your dreams, when the conscious ego is stilled, you often and continually work this transformation. And we have gone into this problem. What we are concerned with is this reconstruction, but this reconstruction in durable enough terms so that communication can take place. Even in dreams, this communication has taken place, but we want much more. We want such a physical reconstruction of image in a purposeful manner, at a given place and time, on your plane. This is far from impossible, but it requires discipline and training, along with the freedom which more and more Ruber is able to bring to these sessions. In the dream world, you do and perform more than you realize. Secondary personality problems that cannot be taken up by the personality in regular life, for various reasons, are worked out as you know. What you do not realize, however, is that these images that you all create have an existence independent of your knowledge, once you have created them. No thought or idea is extinguished, and they all follow the laws which I am in the process of giving you. The growth of an idea takes up no space. I have explained that the expanding universe theory contains gross error, since the universe, the real universe, is expanding. But it is expanding in terms of value fulfillment, and has nothing to do with expansion in space. So, do your dream images exist in the same manner? And you are as unaware of their existence as you are of your own subconscious existence. You do not know how you move across the floor. You are not conscious of each breath you take. You know that your muscles move without your volition. You know you breathe, and in the same manner that you undertake psychological, biological, and mental leaps and functions, so do you also create the reality of the dream world. I have wanted to cover this because I can prove the existence of this dream world to you, and its continuity always within the spacious present. You must understand psychological reality, psychological time, psychological experience, and the dream existence before you can learn to utilize many abilities. Since in all the mentioned aspects, you use your abilities, that is your inner senses, on a subconscious level. Here, you can get the feel of them, so that you know what you are working with. You are always and constantly in the process of transforming energy from the inner senses into physical idea constructions. I want you to become acquainted with the process by which you accomplish this unknowingly, so that you can then perform the same feats with your own awareness. I suggest you break, and if I seem to be ignoring our guests, I was never much of a party boy, although I have my moments. They are extremely welcome, and I expected them both. Now, Before I forget your break entirely, I suggest that you take it. I have gone into the reasons behind these sessions, and they can be read. We have a delicate balance here, and in the delicate balance itself lies the outgrowth and the release of energy. I have mentioned earlier that in a dream experience, as far as the senses are concerned, you may visit a particular location, experience a certain time duration, and yet the location does not exist and cannot be found in your space. And though you experience, say, 5 hours time in your dream, this perhaps takes up merely a flash of clock time, and the physical body does not age during the psychological dream experience in any portion to the actual psychological reality involved. You are free of space, and to a large degree of time, in the sleeping state, because you are not using your energies to transform ideas into durable physical camouflage patterns. You do transform ideas into image patterns, but they do not have durability or continuity on your plane. They do, however, possess durability and continuity on another plane with which you are subconsciously familiar. These images are as independent of your conscious control as the inner workings of your own physical body are beyond your conscious control. These images continue to work out problems that you have set for them, in the same manner that you work out problems as your present personality in one incarnation after another. These dream images also have their own free will, within limits. I have explained the reality behind all art. I have explained that the energy contained therein is regenerating, and although held within certain limits, is constantly active. The same applies to the dream world, and in our experiments, the same will also apply. You will be merely doing what you have been doing all along, but with the aid of the ego, you will be able to prove the extent of your achievement. If everyone on your plane were suddenly to believe that the physical world would end at a particular time, then so it would. You would simply cease your ideal constructions. In our experiments, therefore, we will have to begin with a strong belief that what we are setting out to achieve can in fact be achieved. This in many instances will be distasteful to many, but all physical constructions are transformations of energy made manifest as idea, and then constructed into physical reality. Without the idea, you have no physical reality, and without belief that our aims are possible, there will be no achievement. The achievement gained, however, will then provide its own physical proofs. I have begun to go into the laws of the universe of inner reality. However, at this time, I will not add to them further, since your visitors will only be confused until they are up to date. Nevertheless, I have said that these laws are reflected and followed through all camouflage planes, and in all manifestations, and this also applies to your dream world. I have spoken about fragments, both personality fragments and others, and these also follow the same laws. Your animals possess a closer bond by means of the inner senses. Remember our knowledge of the spider and its web. The web exists both in time and space, as all physical constructions do. That is why I have said that your universe does not exist in the same fashion as the web, simply because it is not bound by space or time. The universe expands, again, in terms of value fulfillment, and in ways which your outer senses cannot comprehend. Your scientists' enchantments are themselves distortive, and will only allow you to probe further into camouflage. What you need are tools and instruments that are free from camouflage. Your scientists think in terms of getting beyond Earth's atmosphere, and thus avoiding the distortions involved. They do not realize that beyond that distortion lies another, and it is within that you must travel, and it is with inner tools that you must work. I will have more to say on this at a later date. As far as witnesses are concerned, and as far as the wife is concerned, I would suggest that you meet upon another evening, when a session is not due to begin with, and leave the matter to Ruber. As far as I am concerned, I would quite welcome another young woman. Nevertheless, the overall personality is what matters, and since Ruber delivers the sessions, I will leave the matter to him. It is much better in the long run to quietly and cautiously advance. I am not the Holy Ghost. I do not request or demand the vows of poverty, obedience, and certainly not chastity. I will at all times demand integrity, and perhaps when all is said and done, that is my only requirement. It is much better if you proceed surely, freely, confidently. But excess enthusiasm can lead to fanaticism, and this at all costs must be avoided. The two witnesses this evening have worked out very well. It is possible that the wife in question may work out well also. But the approach to her should not be overly impassioned, as this would be a mistake. I suggest again a short break. This whole matter is to be determined through training and through discipline. I will not give you signs, nor will I perform tricks in order to convince anyone. The method is in the text. Such signs as I give in these sessions will be for my own purposes, and they will never be purely for display, but for their value as teaching demonstrations. There is no easy way that is effective in the long run, and if I seem heavy-handed in this respect, it is because I would rather have slow and certain results than flashy displays that cannot be maintained. This is a lifetime project, and I mean Ruber and Joseph are getting their effects now through previous hard work and discipline. I will simply not have Ruber levitate 6 feet into the air, nor give any clairvoyant displays, unless there is a deep purpose served. All guests should not be impatient. Nothing will be gained that way. Those who prove interested in these sessions and who become part of a group will be sustained. But always I will work with you in the development of your inner senses, without the display of fireworks for display's sake only. I will go into our guest's background more fully at another session, and also into the enthusiasm which is so refreshing and yet so in need of discipline. This enthusiasm has caused you difficulties in the past, and I simply will not be, the means of allowing to let it operate without using discipline and discretion. Ron noted, here, Jane pointed at Jim. They said, I would be doing you a disservice if I did. The enthusiasm is excellent. However, it should be channeled, and to some degree held within bounds for your own benefit. I do not mean to sound harsh. My feelings are not harsh. I have the advantage of knowing the background of your previous personalities. Within the boundaries of discipline, we shall have, here, freedoms that are relatively unknown in your world today. But we must avoid psychic avalanches. Because the possibilities are so unlimited, we must be sure of ourselves at every point along the way. The material must be read. The experiments in the material must be tried. A means will be worked out in this respect. My dear friends, I hesitate as always to end a session, and again, I could go on for hours. I promised you our party session, and we will have it before long. I enjoy your rainy night. My regards are with you both, and with my usual deep regret. I will end the session. Robert came through for me very well. My best regards also to your visitor, and my heartiest good evening to you all. One note. Your experiments, Joseph, are coming along extraordinarily well, and when you hear the voice that you heard in your experience, then you will recognize it. Ralph said, "Good night, Seth."